So EA is under fire again. Since the huge debacle with Battlefront 2 and the microtransactions being removed, there's been a lot more coming out in the news, a lot more mainstream media covering these microtransactions and loot crates. Countries like Belgium and the Netherlands are looking into whether they are predatory. In fact, Belgium actually considers loot crates now gambling. And then we have Hawaii looking into it, and even other parts of the states looking into whether loot crates are predatory. And there's been more coming out against EA with their Need for Speed game and loot crates being looked into, and those are going to be changed as well. And then there was another article the other day talking about how there is a petition on change.org to fix FIFA from a Redditor who created this, and they have over 25,000 signatures. And basically what this Redditor and what this petition talks about is how the Ultimate Team is pretty unfair, and the drops for good players when you buy packs of cards is extremely low, and you could spend thousands of dollars on it and still not get a great team. In fact, I think it's known that about the best players in Ultimate Team have spent over $8,000 on a team, which to me is absolutely mind-blowing and crazy. I don't know why anybody would ever spend $8,000 on a yearly annual release for a game, unless I guess they're extremely rich and just have a lot of money to blow. At the same time, it's still crazy to think that $8,000 is spent on an Ultimate Team for FIFA, and the drops aren't great, so you're not guaranteed to get amazing players all the time. So all of this is coming out, and it just brings to the question again is these loot crates and the predatory practices of them, and companies like EA that I believe are not great. And I want to preface everything by saying I hate microtransactions, I hate loot crates. However, I don't think there's anything wrong with DLC if it's for extra content. If you're buying a game initially that has everything in it for $60 and have enough value in the product itself when you pay that full retail price. Because if you love a game and you spend tons of hours in it and you want to put more hours into it, there's nothing wrong with getting DLC and getting additional content just to play more of a game that you love. That's actually a really good thing. So there's nothing wrong with that stuff in my opinion, but the loot crate stuff and the microtransactions to make you a better player in multiplayer games, to me, is completely terrible. And I hope they eventually completely get eradicated from gaming. I'm not here just to shit on EA and other companies that do this, because there are other companies that have the same type of practices that EA. Maybe EA is more prevalent in the fact that they don't try to hide it, especially with that Battlefront 2 scandal. And they really put it in every game now that they release. And the reason they do that is because EA has adopted that games are a service mentality now and business model. So basically, they know that they're going to sell you the game at full retail price, or for times like Black Friday or other sales, they're going to get a discounted price. But they want you to continuously spend money on that game throughout its entire lifespan to get more game content and to get more just items within the game, and that's why it's considered a service. And as a person looking at it from a business perspective, obviously it makes sense why they're doing this, and it has to do with the fact that yes, these things are bad, and yes, as gamers we stand up and we talk about how much we dislike them, and the way we went about it for Battlefront 2 is the perfect example of how it should always be done. The opinions should be voiced before the game is released, and then we should hurt them where it counts, and that is in sales, because obviously Battlefront 2 isn't selling nearly as well as it should be, based off of the hype that the game had, and as it would have sold if these predatory loot crate practices weren't implemented. But then I look back at FIFA 18 and I look at this petition for fixing FIFA and getting better drops for when you open up packages to get more rare players, and I think to the fact that players have spent $8,000 on Ultimate Team, and I can guarantee you there's not just one or two people that there's probably tons of people that have spent hundreds and thousands of dollars on Ultimate Team. And EA is making so much money off of this. So obviously, they're going to try to implement these practices into all of their games because they can see the profit and the money signs lighting up in their eyes. And as a business, if you're offering consumers a service and they're buying that service, why would you ever stop offering that service? And I know what you're saying. Well, they should be not taking advantage of their consumers and blah blah blah, but at the same time they're a business and people are still purchasing these loot crates and people are still purchasing these microtransactions, so obviously they're going to add these into all of their games, and the only way we can stop them from doing that is by not purchasing the games and not purchasing these microtransactions. But it really starts with not purchasing the game, because once you've purchased the game's already in your hands, you've already given EA the money. The chances that you will spend money on these microtransactions, depending on the type of person you are, definitely increases if you're enjoying the game. Me personally, I would never purchase any microtransactions. And another reason why I think that these loot crates are so prevalent in games is from an article I was reading. So here in Canada, we have a newspaper and a website called the Financial Post. And basically, there was an article that came out today that said that the reason why there are microtransactions in games is because of the gamer. And it was pretty much saying that it's our fault that there's microtransactions, and it's because we don't want to pay the full cost it is for a game. So right now in the United States, it's $60 to buy a game. In Canada, it's $80. A few years ago in Canada, it was $60. And that $20 hike isn't really because we have decided that we're going to pay more for games to try to get more out of them. It's because of inflation and our crappy dollar. So this article really highlighted the lack of price increase in video games compared to other mediums. And I sort of agree with it. It does kind of make sense in my opinion. I could be completely off. I didn't do much research. This is just how, from reading this article, my opinion based off of what he says, is that back in the 1980s, games cost $60. And today in the States, they still cost $60, and in Canada now they're $80. And that's, for Canada, from 60 to 80 in that amount of time is such a small inflation in price. Whereas you look at things like movies back in the 80s were $5 to go do, where they're $15 now, and that's a 200% increase. And then you have things like comics, which were 70 cents or so back in the day, now they're $4, which is a 500% increase. And then he just goes on and talks about how the lack of increase in price for video games has forced publishers and game developers to implement these microtransactions and these DLC and to offer games as services so that they can make their money back. Because back in the day, it cost a lot less to make these simple games. Whereas today, the games have such huge production values. They have so many more employees working on them, and they cost tons and tons and tons of more money to make. And if you're selling them at $60 a pop in the States or $80 a pop in Canada, you have to sell millions of them to make your money back or to make some revenue off of them. Which is why they have these games as services, and they have these DLC, and they have these microtransactions. And that does make sense to me. As consumers of these games, if we don't want to have these microtransactions, maybe one day we're going to have to start paying more for these games. Hopefully not. Hopefully we can just speak up loud enough and they remove these microtransactions and make great games so they do sell those millions and millions of copies to make tons of money off them. But at the end of the day, that article makes sense to me. I just wanted to bring that up. I'll link it in the description below if you want to read through it, and let me know what you think about that as well. What we did with Battlefront 2, which was stepping up and talking about our displeasure for this game and for the microtransactions and for the loot crates, is what we need to do with all future EA games if we see that they have these predatory practices. We need to do this before the game is released, or at least before it has been sold to many people. Because like every other news story that comes out and every other thing that hits the mainstream that is hot right now, in a week from now, it will be completely forgotten. And EA will continue to go along with their business, and they will continue to put these loot crates into games, and there will still be people out there that spend thousands of dollars on it, which will in turn not deter EA from continuously doing this with all of their future games. Because let's be honest here, they do make good games. We can't sit back and say that the games that EA publishes are bad. They do make great games. They make fun games. They make games that we want to play. Like Battlefront 2, lots of people wanted to play the game. I wanted to play this game. But when I heard about the loot crates thing, I didn't purchase the game. Anyways, that's just what I think about this. I would love to know what you guys think. Like I said, I think that EA is a predatory company when they put out these loot crates, but at the same time, we have to put the onus on ourselves not to give them our money and purchase these things. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, and I'll catch you in the next video.